Call the meeting to order. Not that it seems very disorderly at the moment, but everyone is present. We begin with a moment of reflection and respect. Thank you very much. Begin with the confirmation of the agenda. Josh.
That council adopts the agenda for the meeting of February the 1st, 2023, with inclusion of the items from the postponed meeting of January 25th, 2023, and that includes application for minor variance file number A0123 and application for zoning bylaw amendment file number ZBA 0422, and with the addition of correspondence from Jill Van Kasteren respecting the zoning application 0422 for property known municipally as 62 Pine Street West.
Mover and the seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Barber, seconded by Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? It's carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Councillor Oslach.
Date, February the 1st, 2023, regular council meeting. I, Arthur J. Oslach, have a pecuniary interest in respect to 5.3.1, granting funding of the Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives. I therefore declare the disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof and as follows. Board member, I do therefore agree not to take part in the discussion of or vote on any question in respect to the matter and shall not attempt to in any way further before, during, or after the meeting to influence the voting on any such question.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other declarations? Seeing none, we move to Committee of Adjustment, I believe.
That council do now recess and commence a Committee of Adjustment hearing at 7:02 p.m.
We have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Desrosiers, seconded by Councillor Rahi. Okay. Oh, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
The Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Elmer is convened to consider application 123. Additional information relating to the applications is available for inspection between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. weekdays at Elmer Town Hall. Signed, written submissions are accepted by the Secretary-Treasurer prior to or during the hearing, and such submissions shall be available for inspection by any interested party. In addition, if a party who is notified does not attend the hearing, the committee can proceed and the party is not entitled to any further notice of hearings. Submissions or requests for notice can be sent to clerks@town.elmer.on.ca. A copy of the decision will be mailed to those persons who attend or are represented at the hearing and those who have filed a written request with the Secretary for notice of the committee's decision. The committee will receive input in the following order: presentation of the staff report by the Manager of Planning and Development, Heather James, agent or applicant, the public, and then finally further from staff and the clerk. Application 123 is made by Franz Harder as the owner of property known municipally as 78 Victoria Street South in the town of Elmer. The applicant is seeking relief from the exterior side yard width, and that's the minimum regulation, from 7 meters to 3 meters in order to permit a covered deck addition.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Could the manager of planning and development please provide the report on the application?
Thank you, Mayor Cookett. The property is located at 78 Victoria Street South. That is the southwest corner of Victoria Street South and Elk Street. Just to give a bit of a background how this all transpired, so the covered deck addition has already been constructed. It's my understanding from the property owner that the contractor was not aware they required a building permit and zoning compliance prior to proceeding with construction. Normally, this is not the case. Normally, property owners apply for a minor variance in anticipation of development. So unfortunately, there was a bit of things kind of got out of order. However, the owner was very compliant once they were advised by the building official and myself that they required a minor variance. The application was circulated internally to staff and to all applicable commenting agencies. No comments of concern were received internally. No comments of concern were received from applicable commenting agencies at the time of submission of this report. The application was also circulated to all neighboring property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands, and no comments from neighboring property owners were received at the time of submission of this report. In terms of the analysis, I'll move right over to that in my report. Section 45 of the Planning Act allows a municipality to grant a minor variance to a zoning bylaw based on the 4 tests as follows. First test, does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? And yes, it does. The property is designated low density residential in our official plan, which allows for a variety of housing types, including single detached dwellings. The proposed minor variance does not contravene the official plan policies. Second test, does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? And yes, it does. The intention of providing a minimum exterior side yard width is to promote a consistent building line and to provide for adequate separation from the street in support of public safety. The proposed reduction to the exterior side yard width meets the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw for this application. Third test, is the variance requested desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and buildings? And yes, it is. The variance will enable the owner to continue to have their covered deck addition added onto their single detached dwelling and not have to have it removed. Due to the location of the existing single detached dwelling, the covered deck addition is unable to meet the minimum exterior side yard width. The variance will not compromise the existing development pattern or the neighborhood character. Planning staff is of the opinion that the variance will facilitate an appropriate use of the land. And the fourth and final test, is the variance considered minor in nature? And yes, it is. You're going to hear this a lot from me and any minor variance applications. I look at minor not necessarily based on a specific number. It's more appropriate to look at minor based on the degree of potential impact to neighboring property owners, the environment, and the impact on municipal, county, or provincial functions. The impact from the proposed minor variance is minimal with respect to the environment, municipal functions, and surrounding property owners. And I do want to note, as part of the internal review, this was circulated to Operations and Public Works Department, and they had no concerns, and they didn't feel as though it would impact their operations. Therefore, it is the planning staff's opinion that the proposed application for a minor variance is desirable for the appropriate development and use of the lands and meets the intent and purpose of the official plan policies and zoning bylaw regulations, and recommend that the request for the proposed application for a minor variance A0301-23 be approved, subject to no concerns being raised through any oral written submissions being received at tonight's public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Is the applicant or agent present? And if so, do they wish to speak concerning the application? Don't see that. Could the clerk confirm whether or not any members of the public wish to speak to the application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at the time of publishing the agenda, we did not have any members that had registered to speak. However, we do have some members of the public in attendance this evening, so if anybody does wish to speak to the application, I'd ask that you walk to the podium and state your name for the record.
Okay, seeing none, has the clerk received any additional communications related to the application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have not.
Very well. Open the floor to any discussion. Open the members of the committee. Member Barber.
Thank you. Just a clarification, a minor variance changes the lot dimensions or the setback requirements. Specifically, in this particular case, it's for a covered porch. If the owner or a subsequent owner decided at a later date to make that a four-season addition, the minor variance is still applicable, correct? And all they would need would be an appropriate building permit?
Yes, that is correct. So as long as they are not altering the foundation of this covered deck, that is correct. They would not require a minor variance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Member Chapman?
Yes, Your Mayor, it's more of a comment than anything. It's frustrating that they have built this and then ask for forgiveness. And I just hope that this doesn't become a precedent for other building in the future. So that's just the comment, that the contractor should know whether they need a permit or not.
Any other comments or discussion? Right. Seeing none, there's no further discussion. The committee will now consider the following resolution. Josh?
That the Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Elmer receives report Plan 123, Planning Evaluation Report, Application for Minor Variance, A0123, 78 Victoria Street South, and that the Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Elmer grants the application for minor variance A0123, 78 Victoria Street South, subject to the condition that the proposed development is substantially in accordance with application for minor variance A0123, drawing included in the report Plan 0123.
So we've already moved and seconded that, haven't we? No?
No.
Have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Member Van Raes and seconded by Member Oslach. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We will move on to the next application, and we have a resolution to adjourn the committee first.
That the Committee of Adjustment hearing does now close and council reconvene at 7:12 PM.
All right, mover and a seconder, moved by Member Barber, seconded by Member Rahi. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Very well. And we need to move into the public hearing.
That
Josh?
council do now commence a public meeting at 7:13 PM to receive input from the public with respect to the Planning Evaluation Report, application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number ZBA 0422.
Okay, I should go ahead. Okay, heard the resolution. We have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Desrosiers, seconded by Councillor Van Raes. You have a statement. Oh, yes, of course. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
All right. This public meeting is taking place under the Planning Act 1990 as amended. At this virtual public meeting, council will hear representations regarding the Planning Evaluation Report, application for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0422, made by Amy and Nigel Brook, represented by Carolyn Baker of Baker Planning Group. Please note that those who do not provide comment or written submission prior to the decision of the appropriate authority may not be afforded the right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Council will hear comments in the following order. Presentation of the staff report by the Manager of Planning and Development, Heather James. Then we'll hear from the agent, Carolyn Baker, who is in attendance this evening. Then the public, and then finally, any follow-up required from from staff and from the clerk.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Could the Manager of Planning and Development please provide your report?
Thank you, Mayor Cookett. A zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted for 62 Pine Street West, property owners being Amy and Nigel Brook, agent being Caroline Baker of Baker Planning Group. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from residential type 2 to residential type 3 special provision 10 R3-10 to permit 4 residential dwelling units and to permit 1 parking space in the exterior side yard. The zoning bylaw amendment will also recognize an existing undersized exterior side yard width, recognize an existing undersized rear yard depth, and lastly, recognize an existing building height. The building on the subject lands was formerly a place of worship and is now being used as a legal residential duplex. The proposed additional dwelling units will be located in the basement of the building. Moving on through my report, if we go to Figure 1, you can see the location of the property. 62 Pine Street West is located at the southeast corner of Pine Street West and Wellington Street. Moving on to Figure 2, shows the existing lot layout of the property as well as the existing building that will have the proposal for the additional 2 dwelling units. Moving on to planning evaluation and analysis. In terms of the provincial policy statement, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the PBS, as it allows for healthy, livable, and safe communities, also allows for multi-unit housing, and also allows for intensification for residential development. Moving on to the County of Elgin official plan. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment conforms to the County of Elgin official plan. This property, the town of Aylmer, is located within the Tier 1 settlement area. Within that settlement area, low, medium, and high-density residential uses are permitted. This proposal represents low-density housing and infilling within an existing established residential neighborhood. Next, the Town of Aylmer official plan. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment conforms to our town's official plan. Within our official plan, we have policies that speak to residential intensification and providing opportunities for housing affordability, and this proposal does represent those policies. Lastly, moving on to the Town of Aylmer zoning bylaw. Planning staff are recommending that the lands be rezoned to R3-10 to permit the 4 residential dwelling units and to permit 1 parking space in the exterior side yard. It's important to note as well, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is recognizing some existing deficiencies on the property and with the building. And as I mentioned, this was a former place of worship. And unfortunately, it just does not meet the setbacks, as well as the height of the building exceeds what would be the maximum building height in this zone. I do want to note that the Operations and Public Works Department has worked quite closely with me on this application. And in particular, they have no concerns regarding using a portion of the exterior side yard along Wellington Street to provide 1 parking space. They are of the opinion it will not have an impact on municipal operations. I do want to note a building permit to permit the 2 additional residential units and a permit for a second driveway fronting onto Wellington Street will be required prior to occupancy of the units. In terms of consultation, the application was circulated internally and to all applicable commenting agencies. We did receive 1 comment from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority indicating that they had no concerns with the file at this time. As I mentioned, the Operations Department has no concerns, as well as the rest of the town departments have no concerns. The application was also circulated to all neighboring property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. At the time of writing this report, I did receive one comment from Ian and Judith Cameron, who reside at 59 Pine Street West. I have summarized their concerns within my report, as well as I have identified and spoke to their concerns within the report. If council would wish me to speak to them, I can, otherwise they're summarized within the report. I also do want to note that as of today, I also received a letter of concern from Jill Van Castern, who resides on Wellington Street. I can note it's right adjacent to this property, directly to the south. The concerns that Ms. Van Castern has is, in particular, the proposed 1.5 meter walkway. And if we can just go back to figure 2 in my report, it's a picture. For this situation, it's much better. Are we able to zoom in on figure 2? And I can kind of see. I can actually kind of tell you exactly. Okay, perfect. Okay, so if we go to the rear of the property, the rear lot line, so that would be kind of, I guess, to the west side of this drawing, you'll see there's a proposal for a proposed 1.5 meter concrete walkway in what would be the rear yard of this property. It's my understanding from Ms. Van Castern that there is a existing door at the rear of this building that's not in use. And they had concerns about the future tenants of these units in the basement utilizing that door and the potential for negative impact to their property. What they have recommended in their letter is they're asking for that doorway to be, or access door to be removed, and to have a new access door placed kind of in that small little jut out, and the door would open towards Wellington Street. And in particular, they're asking for that concrete walkway to not extend around the jut out, but to end just before you get to that little jut out in the building on the west side. This afternoon, I spoke with Ms. Baker about, she was provided this letter. I spoke with Ms. Baker about these concerns, and she has spoken with the property owner, and they are in agreement to removing that door that is there and to place a new door, kind of a new door in a way that it will open onto Wellington Street, and have also agreed to not extend that concrete walkway. In terms of the zoning bylaw, we're not able to include that as a condition within the zoning bylaw. What we can do, and what I'm recommending to council this evening, if you so agree, is that we can include these requests within the council resolution. And from there, they would then be given to our chief building official to have in the file and to be reviewing when the building permit application comes in. Unfortunately, it's not a regulation or whatnot. It's kind of more of a design of the building feature. I've spoken with our chief building official. Moving this doorway will not have an impact in terms of building code or fire code. And it is my understanding that this doorway is required for this fourth dwelling unit. It has to do with the way in which they're splitting up the basement apartments. Ms. Baker could speak to that further, but that is my understanding. So going back to my planning report, it is the planning staff's opinion that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and it conforms to the County of Elgin official plan and the Town of Elmer official plan, and recommend that the request for the zoning bylaw amendment be approved, subject to no concerns being raised tonight at the public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather, and thank you for dealing with a neighbor's concern so quickly. The next item is the applicant or agent present. I believe the agent is present, Caroline Baker, present virtually as we do these days. Hello, Caroline. Did you wish to speak?
Good evening to the mayor and members of council. Yes, my name is Caroline Baker. I'm a registered professional planner at Baker Planning Group. I'm assisting the owners with the application, and you'll see one of the owners, Amy Brooke, has online available should you have any questions for her. Certainly, Ms. James provided a thorough and comprehensive review of the zone change application. Just wanted to add that certainly I would agree that this is consistent with provincial policy, conforming to your official plan, and is an opportunity for modest infilling using existing built infrastructure. We would consider this an adaptive reuse. And these are important opportunities to add additional rental units to our communities because they don't alter the built form or the building height. And certainly it's our opinion that this site is suitable to accommodate the 4 dwelling units, given the building size and the ability to accommodate parking that meets your zoning bylaw. Certainly in agreement with the conversations earlier this evening with respect to the neighbor. It's the owner's intent to certainly try and move that door to the, what would we call the alternative or opposite side of that neighboring house to try and address concerns related to noise or people being in close proximity to their dwelling. So certainly here to answer any other questions either council or members of the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Did you, Josh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have Arnie Vaughn in attendance this evening, who is standing up. So at your call, proceed.
Hello, Mr. Vaughn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. I just want to raise a few issues of concern myself personally. I'm an immediate neighbor to the property where the application has been made of 62 Pine Street. And from what I've reviewed, their request has a direct and serious negative impact on my own personal property where I've resided in excess of 23 years. This is not the first change to the property lines in between 62 Pine Street and 56 Pine Street. I believe if you were to review it, you would find, for the purposes of severing the property directly related to the south of this church at 62 Pine, there was a variance to the property lines. That home is now owned and occupied by Miss Van Castren. At the time that was done, all of the property lines were moved from a direction of west to east. Not a great distance, but they were in fact moved, affecting a fence on my property and affecting a fence neighboring to the property directly east of me, at which point in time was owned by Mrs. Purdy. This is the second change to the property. In my opinion, the applicant, their request to remove a tree on Pine Street West, directly between 62 Pine Street West and 56, for the purposes of providing adequate parking, actually affects my property again. They are butting directly against my property lines. My question is, with a fourplex in that building, we now have one laneway for 4 vehicles at that property with 2 apartments. With the addition of 2 more apartments in the basement of a building that has no fire barrier in that basement separating anything, I believe, and correct me if I'm incorrect, the requirement would be for 1.5 parking spaces per unit. We're now looking at another 3. The home owned by Ms. Van Castren, directly south of that building, butting up to the west side of my property, is separated by a distance that I can tell you, I didn't measure it before I came here tonight, but if I was to outreach my arms, I'd touch building to building, approximately 3 to 4 feet. This is where her concern was brought in. I have a concern over the integrity of the neighborhood. That neighborhood has been occupied, and I understand there's R2 zoning on that street. And I'm not opposed to the R2 zoning on that street. I'm not opposed to the apartment directly to the east of me. I'm not opposed to any of those apartments. I am opposed to adding this duplex to become a fourplex. I have really concerns as to the reasonable expectation of privacy in my own backyard from the back apartment that has an elevated deck above and anyone standing on viewing into my backyard. I'll guarantee you, I'm not doing anything I shouldn't do in my backyard, but I still have a reasonable expectation to privacy. I don't believe that granting this application is conducive to maintaining the existing neighborhood of Pine Street West with a number of heritage homes on that street. Part of what Aylmer promoted as part of their walking tour of heritage homes and their applications for communities in bloom. The congestion of the corner, Wellington and Pine, a very busy street, at the least. Wellington Street is a nice street. It's been redone, it's nice, it's smooth. Everybody uses it as speedway to get across Talbot. In between that and McDonald's on Wellington, and adding another laneway on Wellington, within, my estimation is going to be 25 to 30 feet of the intersection of Pine Street West, that then jogs for 5 meters and continues on Pine Street West into a cul-de-sac, does cause concern with the flow of traffic. Ms. Van Castren has concerns about her neighborhood. Mr. Cameron, and I've read his report that was sent, has concerns. And I can tell you he would be happy to be here in person, but like everybody else that was restricted to travel due to COVID, at his first opportunity, he took off south and went to Florida. So he had that book before this came out. I mean, I don't believe that it is the proper area for that fourplex. Maybe I should have done some more research. I don't believe that it meets all 4 points that you addressed. The minimum side yard allowance. When the property lines are abutting against one another right now, how are we going to meet the requirement for the minimum side yard property allowance? The need for appropriate land use. I would respectfully submit to you that it doesn't meet the need for appropriate land use. And Ms. Baker, I'll invite you to reply to that. And if I'm out of order, I'll apologize, but the rent that's being charged that I'm informed of by the tenants that reside there presently is extravagant. This is a property that, and again, if I'm out of line, I apologize both to council and to mayor, is nothing but a money grab by a developer who does not live in the town of Aylmer. At the expense of residents that have resided on that street for decades. And I would say and submit that this application, if council was to grant it, it does nothing but devalue my property. I have nothing else to say.
All right, thank you very much for your, the manager of planning and development wish to add any items? Make any comments?
I just want to note that in the zoning bylaw amendment, we are only recognizing the existing deficiencies. So we're not worsening the situation that's there. We're just recognizing the reduction that is already present on the ground. In terms of the parking, the zoning bylaw only allows for 1 parking space per unit. Therefore, there's been 4 spaces proposed. I do want to note that in the Figure 2 plan that was submitted by Ms. Baker, it clearly shows 3 parking spaces to be proposed for Wellington Street, with the 4th space to come off of Wellington Street, and that from the edge of the parking area to the easterly lot line, there's it looks like 1.7 meters proposed, which provides adequate buffering in terms of the zoning bylaw between the parking area and the lot line.
Do you have a question, Heather, what about the ARU provisions within the zoning bylaw? What happens without?
I was just going to get to that. So due to Bill 23, residential properties that are fully serviced, which is the case here for the entire town of Elmer, allows for up to 3 residential units as of right. No zoning bylaw amendments, no planning applications required. All that would be required is compliance with Ontario Building Code and fire codes. So should this application for 4 dwelling units not be successful, the property owner can still pursue for an additional dwelling unit with the building department. And I do want to note, and I do note it in my report, but I do want to stress that there is still building code requirements in terms of meeting fire and building code for this building before final occupancy can be granted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Baker, did you want to add anything?
Through the mayor to the comments received, certainly we've heard concerns with respect to privacy. Just wanted to further add that it isn't necessarily adding additional windows on the existing building that would create greater potential for overlook or privacy concerns in the rear yard. And that was certainly one of our considerations in reviewing the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to this application? Okay. Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Oslach?
Your worship, I just want to have one comment. I applaud Jill Van Kasteren for her comment, and the Cameron, Mr. Cameron is across the street, and I applaud them for their letters.
Okay. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Just a clarification, was brought up as a concern of the fire separation in the basement units. Obviously, they're going to have to meet compliance of the either Ontario Building Code or the Ontario Fire Code for separation. I believe you had already summarized that. Ms. Baker?
Oh, I apologize. I thought that was to Ms. James. Correct. They will require full building permit and compliance with both Ontario Building Code and fire separation between units as well as adjacent properties.
Interconnecting smoke alarms on all units?
Through the mayor, I believe the owner is nodding yes. I would profess I am not an OBC expert, but they will have to meet code.
And one
But
more. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I apologize. Please proceed.
And one more clarification on the relocation of the exterior door. That will still provide proper egress from the basement unit?
Through the mayor, that is correct. It continues to have to meet building code.
Yes, if I may just add, Ms. Baker and I had discussions about this. She also consulted with the property owner, and yes, we are able to adequately move that door so that it opens towards Wellington Street.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Raes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I actually had a chance to go by and view the space between the 2 buildings, the one on Pine and the one on Wellington, so I'm happy to hear that moving the door is going to happen because there is very little space between those 2 buildings. My other question, though, is there was a remark of a tree being moved. Which property is that tree on? Is that on the 62 Pine?
Certainly, I can respond if that's all right.
Hi.
Gotta go out. Sorry, I've got a little one that's just come home to bed. So certainly the tree that was brought into question is on the municipal right-of-way, so we will certainly have to work with municipal staff in terms of the ability to retain it. There may be options to angle the driveway for its retention.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Since this is a public meeting under the Planning Act, we need to close the meeting first before we vote on the resolution. So we have a motion to close the meeting.
That council do now close this public meeting at 7:40 PM and reconvenes the meeting of council.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Van Raes. All those in favor? Is carried. Now we have the resolution. Did you have a question, Councillor Roselach?
Yes, could we have a recorded vote?
You'd like a recorded vote?
Yes.
okay. This is just, this resolution is just to close the meeting,
Yeah,
Councillor
okay.
Roselach, so not the resolution. You
Yeah.
understand that? Okay.
Sorry, so just for clarification, Mr. Chair, we're taking a recording vote to close the meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the resolution that, on the floor.
Okay, so just for clarity, so this is moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Van Raes, that council do now close this public meeting at 7:40 PM and reconvene the meeting of council. Councillor DeRosiers, so you'll respond yea or nay, depending on your preference for the motion.
Just to close the meeting?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Councillor Oslich,
Yes.
Councillor Chapman,
Yes.
Mayor Cookit,
Yes.
Councillor Van Raes,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barber,
Yes.
Councillor Rahe.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. Now we proceed with the motion concerning the zoning.
That council of the town of Elmer approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0422 in accordance with the bylaw 0423 and consider giving 3 readings to the bylaw 0423 at the time of the bylaw readings. And further, that the access door located at the rear of the building, known municipally as 62 Pine Street, be removed and replaced with a new access door that faces Wellington Street, and that the proposed concrete walkway to be located in the rear yard at the end of the proposed new access door.
Great, you've heard the resolution. You note that the amended part or the added part concerning the door is part of that resolution. We have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Barber, seconded by Councillor Van Raes.
Could we have
Yes,
a
Councillor
record?
Roselach?
Yes, Your Worship. Could we have a recorded vote again?
Is there any discussion on this motion before we do this? Councillor, Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is one of those difficult ones where the effect may have the application may have an effect in the area, but as there aren't really any significant changes to the exterior of the building, there is no greater intensification on the use of the lot. We're between a rock and a hard place as members of council to turn it down. We're following provincial guidelines, we're doing what's expected of us, but it's still difficult.
Any other comments or questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the recorded vote.
Councillor Oslich,
Nay.
Deputy Mayor Barber,
Yes.
Councillor DeRosiers,
Nay?
Councillor Chapman,
Yes.
Councillor Van Raes,
Yes.
Councillor Rahe,
Nay.
Mayor Cookit.
Yes.
So by a vote of 4 to 3, the motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is a public meeting for the operational budget. Yes, so we begin with the delegation, correct? So start with, I think, Mr. Dan Reed, saying the Elmer and Malahide Museum and Archives. Step up to the podium, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Cuckett, Deputy Mayor Barber, and respected members of council. We really appreciate this opportunity to come and speak to the grant application for funding by the Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives. I've spent most of my life in this town, and I actually consider myself to owe a great deal to the ongoing work of this museum personally. I'm currently the volunteer director of finance for the museum board. There's a lot I would like to share with you this evening, and I want to be respectful of your time. First of all, I want to express the deep sense of gratitude that we have to Town Council and the Town of Aylmer. We've been blessed with unfailing support ever since the museum's inception in 1977. And I'm here to encourage you that every dollar that has been spent over the years has been well and efficiently used to further the responsibility that every community has to faithfully preserve its past. So let me provide you just with a quick overview of this last year in the hopes of assuring you of wise stewardship. Our total expenses for 2022 came in at $180,374.95. The town of Aylmer provided $20,000 of that, or almost exactly 11% of what we needed in order to operate. The rest came from grants from other levels of government, donations, and tireless fundraising, mainly on the backs of our faithful volunteers, and I want to recognize those that were able to come out this evening to be here to support this. Of the total expenses, it was just a little over $88,000 that was spent on contract wages. And out of that, the museum operates with only 2 full-time and 1 part-time staff members. If I can, I'd like to highlight just a few of the achievements of the past year. The Museum and Archives mounted a new major exhibition on the history of medicine in Elmer Malahide and produced this stunning 210-page publication. And if I may, I'd like to pass it. I've bookmarked a selection in there for you to especially notice, because I think it speaks to something that really is the culmination of 4 or 5 decades of hard work by museum staff and volunteers. In there, you'll find photographs and narrative history covering almost every aspect of healthcare professionals in Aylmer Malahide. And you might notice that there's a little QR code there that you can scan in order to listen to one of the people in this publication in their own words, who died many years ago. And so I think this is just a wonderful way for us to be able to pass forward to future generations the things that have been important to this town and this community, that have been foundational. On top of that, the museum put on 2 pop-up exhibits, one at the Aylmer Fair this summer and another on Aylmer's Christmas Through the Ages. We carried out the entire process of acquiring a new building and then initiated a major fundraising campaign and held open houses to raise awareness. We sponsored a classic car show held in conjunction with the Saxonia Club's Oktoberfest. Thousands of donated items were received and processed for the archives and collection. And this included a truly massive donation of wonderful artifacts by the Springfield Oddfellows, and another made up of slides, negatives, and photographs by Dick Brown of Imperial Tobacco. Additionally, substantial work was done to create a series or set of edu-kits to be used for outreach programs to schools and homeschool groups. The Mennonite History Project was begun. New websites and multimedia presentations were created, documents were transcribed, photographs, negatives, and slides were scanned. I'm just giving you a partial list of all of the things that were done. And I guess the question we should ask is, how is that possible? How is all of that accomplished with just 2.5 paid staff? And as with any organization of this type, no dollar value could ever be attached to the vast number of hours that are put in by our volunteers. These are women and men, most of whom are longtime Aylmer residents, some at least third generation, most of whom have probably spent their entire lives here. And they contribute in countless other ways to this community, to Aylmer Legion, Horticultural Society, Aylmer Community Theatre, thank you, Ron Sawyer. Service clubs, town council, the list goes on and on. I think we're all sensing that we're in an interesting time where service clubs in our community are suffering. They're suffering from lack of engagement with younger generations, more and more difficulty in getting the volunteers to continue to do the good work that has been done. So I have a lot of respect for the volunteers who continue to back up their service to this town out of their own wallets and out of their own personal resources. Now comes our request to you. I know this is never an easy time of year, especially this year with inflation and all of the many requests that there are for funds. We're asking Town Council to approve maintaining our grant funding in the amount of $20,000. Despite inflation, we are not asking for any increase over last year. To use the classic Tim Hortons metric, it amounts to less than the cost of 2 cups of coffee for each of our citizens. Losing any portion of that grant will seriously impede our work in a year when full funding is going to be even more critical. Through 2022, in fact, our staff had received 0 wage increases for the previous 5 years. And finally, at the end of last year, the board approved a wage bump which amounts to less than half of what was lost to inflation during those years. And it does nothing to make up for the anticipated cost of living increase in the coming year. All 3 of these amazing women who serve us, Kathy Vandermeer, Amanda Van Weingart, and Sarah Bentley, are vastly qualified in their fields. They are literally Jills of all trades. I can't even begin to list all of the jobs that each tackled last year. And although they don't track these numbers, I can attest that each of them puts in countless unpaid hours. In fact, they often rope in their spouses to do the same. They almost never claim mileage for all the running around that's required. Indeed, they rarely even take lunch breaks, instead grabbing a quick bite at their desks. Now, it would take much longer than I have here this evening to spell out for you just how valuable I think the work of this nonprofit is. The museum is an active booster of this community and of tourism here. It has provided hundreds of young people with summer jobs over the decades. It provides a very important liaison with other significant cultural groups in Ontario and across Canada. It constantly answers media requests and requests for help by educators and researchers. Without our own museum and archives, so much of our shared heritage as a town would have likely already been consigned to the dustbin. We expect the need for what we do to only accelerate as a large portion of our population ages and looks for a place that will safely preserve their stories, pictures, and priceless artifacts to be handed down to future generations. Now I wish I brought a glass of water with me. Thank you very much for your time and your indulgence. I'd be happy to take any questions. Hopefully I can answer them. And then after that, we'd like to leave you with a quick glimpse into one of the main things that we'll be working towards in 2023. Are there questions?
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Reid. Council, any questions? Deputy Mayor Barber?
Just a quick question, Dan. When do you hope to open the new facility? What's your plan?
The plan is to fundraise over most of the coming year and to solicit engineering reports in order to make a stage-by-stage plan for what needs to be done. We're expecting the renovations to run about $2.4 million. That is quite separate from what we're asking for this evening, which is a grant for the operating expenses we'll have for the coming year. A small portion of that, of course, will be devoted, or what resources we'll need to spend will be devoted to continuing that process. I think we're hopeful that by the end of 2024, we'll be there or close to there. There's a lot that needs to be done before I think we can answer that question.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Reed, you mentioned that the town grant was approximately 11% of your operating costs. Where does the rest of it come from?
I would be happy to submit a full accounting for that if you'd like. Our volunteers go out to, I actually am not one of them, but it's Bingo City, and volunteer there regularly in order to get funds from that source. We certainly get grant money from provincial and federal government as well.
I know you submitted along with the agenda, but just for the people out there watching and they don't scroll through the agenda, just a general idea. So you're talking about federal grants and provincial grants and fundraising are the main other areas of income.
Yes, and in fact, our members, they contribute tens of thousands of dollars a year in membership fees and donations that they make. We actually did a fair amount of fundraising last year using things like when you ask people to buy tickets in order to, Thank you, raffles. I don't know if anybody else suffers from fibromyalgia, but
That's all right. I look for words all the time.
So, yes, Kathy Vandermeer, who is our astounding bookkeeper and office manager, can provide, like I said, a full accounting. I have it here in front of me. There are so many sources that she is able to suss out and to continue to solicit to keep things going and to keep the lights on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, we have a resolution. Did you want to?
If that's all right, just a very brief
Right,
video
listen.
that gives you a sense, like I said, of what we'll be spending some of our time and energy on in 2023.
Welcome to your new community museum. We are pleased to announce that the Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives will be moving to a new location in Elmer's downtown core. Since our founding in 1977, the museum has served as a repository to which our community entrusts its history. Our collection contains over 50,000 artifacts, and we work tirelessly to catalog, preserve, and exhibit these items for future generations. Over the past 45 years, the museum has far exceeded its capacity and has been limited by its present location in how it shares the stories that it holds in trust.
Would you say that our current building at 14 East Street was meant to be our permanent home?
Oh, God, no. It never was intended to be that, even by the original board. Our collection was just going by leaps and bounds. They recognized that that was going to be a problem.
So when I first started with the museum, I quickly found out that we were very overcrowded and didn't have a lot of space for storage or office spaces, and our exhibit space was also limited. We started looking for a new building, and over the years we would search out many different locations, but there was always something wrong, whether the location wasn't ideal, we didn't have the funding in place, etc. When we looked at this building, which was then owned by the McFarland Rowland Insurance Company, previously was Hamilton Ward Cathers Insurance, and previous to that was Royal Bank.
We realized that we had a winner here, that it was a turnkey building, it was already in very good shape. We realized that there were going to be some requirements to make it into the ideal museum space that we'd looked for all these years.
Our new building will require extensive renovations before it's suitable as our new home. We will need a space for our rotating thematic exhibits and a space for each of our planned permanent exhibits. A history of Elmer and Malahide, before Malahide, a pre-colonial perspective, the general store, and a history of the Low German Mennonites of Elmer and Malahide. Visitors will be able to access our database of artifacts, peruse our resource library, or gather with the community in the conference and research room. We will also require extensive, climate-controlled storage space to facilitate our ever-growing collections.
For the purposes of the upcoming renovation, a certain amount of fundraising is required on the part of the museum. The renovations could run in the area of $2.3 million. A lot of money, but doable. That kind of fundraising is what we're engaged in now.
We need your help to create the museum our community deserves.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. An amazing video. So now we have the resolution.
Great. That the delegation from Dan Reed, representing the Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives regarding 2023 grant funding be received as information.
We have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Desrosiers. Any discussion? All those in favor? Yes, carried. Thank you very much. So the next item is 5.3.2, the item we've all been looking forward to. Discussion of the budget. Let's just start with it.
That report, Finance 123, respecting the preliminary operating budget, be received as information, and that council direct staff to present the final 2023 operational budget with council-directed amendments for review and adoption.
Okay, that's a motion on the table. I need a motion, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Oslach and Councillor. Right. All those in favor? No, we don't need all those in favor until we're done. I want to have it done right now, right? So Heather, I think you're going to do this, right? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That would have been the easiest budget presentation I've ever done. So through you and to members of council, the budget you have in front of you this evening shows a significant levy increase in 2023, resulting from many external pressures, reductions in provincial streams, funding streams, and that we've historically relied upon for operational funding and residual costs from the pandemic and inflation. One of the examples of the provincial funding that the town relied upon heavily historically was the funding. That has been reduced in 2023 by $77,000. Unprecedented increases recently communicated from our benefits provider are coming in over 20 to 25% in life and LTD premiums. Health and dental benefits are expected to increase by 6% and 4% respectively. Some of the operating expenses are driven by global commodity pricing issues. Gasoline has come down a bit, but diesel remains high, which is affecting some of the cost of running our machines, not to mention the cost of transportation and the supply chain. So for other operating expenses, analysis has been done and efforts have been made across all departments, such as pushing off operating tool replacements, delaying training, finding new ways of generating revenue with onboarding of technical team members, and offering zero-impact special programming at EECC. So for insurance overall, primary liability and umbrella are forecasted to be up 10 to 15% this year. Property requires 6 to 8% inflationary increases per our insurance broker. Auto is expected to increase 2 to 3%. Accident policies and crime are expected to remain flat, but cyber insurance policies are affecting the public sector 10 to 50%. That whole policy is negotiated in April, so we don't have numbers, but preliminary numbers have been put in this budget. I'm going to start with the changes in the general government. I'm going to go through every department, and then we can open the floor, if that's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, for questions. So general government, biggest changes here are the salary and wages, contractual salary adjustments, and benefit costs, which are the largest costs of this department. Contracted services for IT and computer hardware software has increased by $29,000 due to licensing requirements driven by the cyber insurance requirements, as I mentioned. Modernization such as Laserfiche is now being utilized and we're properly archiving documentation, which is now occurring at Town Hall. In the general fund areas, we had a reversal showing up for prior council contributions. So last year, council decided to to close the gap on funding by $11,000 from their council initiatives reserve. That reverses this year, and that is contributing to the starting point of 8.89%. We also had $24,000 in expenses and contributions from reserves that offset because we are done the election. That election was funded out of discretionary operating reserve. So in the general fund area, we've also added 2 revenue streams such as burial permits, and we now have 2 officiants at Town Hall that are able to perform marriage ceremonies. Planning and development is the next department. That's the largest change has been the addition of the Associate Director of Infrastructure and Development. Staff have discovered that with Terry bringing his expertise in lot grading and planning and assessment and inspections, we may be able to generate revenue for the town that would otherwise be subcontracted to one of the external engineers. So through onboarding Terry, the general development and review will also help out the CBO. Next is Operations Department, which includes water, wastewater, roads, environmental services. So I just wanted to mention that our team is very unique because they're able to be deployed in wastewater, water, roads, and the maintenance thereof. So their labor cost is shared between all departments. Specifically, environmental services is related to, the biggest change is related to the garbage contract, or the recycling contract, pardon me, which has changed because of OREG 349/22. Municipalities are no longer required to operate blue box programs. So we've been doing negotiations with CMO and Miller Waste to receive the best outcome for our local ratepayers. We don't anticipate any changes to occur until the second half of 2023, which would result in a savings of approximately $65,000 in this department. I'll let the rest of the team explain the details on that when it comes up. So basically, we're only realizing half of the value in 2023. In 2024, it's expected to essentially double the value of that benefit. So next is transportation budget. So the primary changes are due to labor costs and materials. $61,000 for materials and supplies. The majority is gas, diesel, and oil estimates. Also, we would add $20,000 to 2023 for that. Vehicle repairs and maintenance has increased by $15,000 due to an aging fleet. And repairs and maintenance operational budget for 2022 wasn't sufficient, so we increased that to $50,000. Initial hydro estimates are looking to be around $77,000 for 2022, so we're upping that a little bit in 2023 to $84,000. Water and sewer departments have zero impact, so you'll see zero impact on the levy because these are self-funded systems. The benefit from the water and sewer rates will be seen through the adjustment in the offset to reserves to help out the aging capital infrastructure. Parks and recs, high-level changes, very minute, just some costs to insurance and repairs and maintenance. We took the prorated amounts and just made sure that our budget was true for 2023. The largest contribution in there was changed for reserve contribution to fund some of the projects for the Parks and Recs master plan that are coming out. At the ECC, we've adjusted revenue estimates for 2023, which will be presented to the board next meeting. The best estimates that we have right now, we've used actuals from the software and increased them for a percentage for user fees. So all those details will be presented to the board by the end of February. The Protection Services Department includes bylaw, animal control, 911, emergency management, fire, and building. So the changes in building include the incremental revenues, which cover the increases in expense for the salary of the building department. Incremental costs for 911 services are approximately $2,000 for 2023. And changes in fire other than the salary include increases to insurance and repairs and maintenance of $11,000. The $2,000 increase to contractual services is IT cost related. The next area is the police budget. I'll just comment briefly. The police budget was approved pending council approval by the PSB board. And then finally, we have in other boards and budgets is the Catfish Creek increase of 9%. Committee budget includes the cemetery, which has $18,000 contribution, which is also included in the grants and donations request. Heritage Committee and Communities in Bloom remain unchanged for 2023. And finally, the council contributions budget is made up of the community grants and donations requests, which have increased overall to $58,000, up from $42,000 in 2022. Included in there is Elmer's portion of the youth subsidy for the amount, plus the community donations requests in the attached, including museum, Kinsman, et cetera. So before I go through the options, did you want to go back to the departmentals?
I think I'd like you to go through the options
Okay.
first, and then we'll go back to the departments one by one, right?
Sounds good. So we're calling these green options. Basically, these are the least impact overall to user groups, service level, and approved, by staff without really any other consideration other than council's approval. So these can be summarized as one-time cuts to 2023. Your starting point next year would basically be these cuts. So the first option would be to reduce a council contribution of $8,000 that we currently have in the budget for the next election, which would be 4 years from now. Basically because we were able to keep the election within budget. So we would stop this contribution for 1 year only, and we would catch it up next year. The second option would be to reduce $10,000 and $25,000, which are in two different departments, which is the CAO department and the General Government Department. Contribution to reserve would be reduced for modernization projects for 2023, since there is money available currently in the capital budget carry forward amount of $55,000. So these projects would stop contribution for 1 year only. We would start them again next year. The third option is to reduce a total of $50,000 to capital funds for asset management for 2023 only. We had one bonus this year, which was incremental OSIF funding, which would offset this. Although OSIF funding is obligatory, we are able to tell you that we would be using it for the Elk Street project. So that project wouldn't be on the board till 2024 to 2026, which would make us feel comfortable to reduce that contribution one time. So if the above three options were considered, we would be able to reduce the budget by $93,000, or the levy by $93,000. But these one-time cuts, as I said, would show up next year. So that would reduce the tax levy increase to approximately 7.45%. There's two other options that we're considering green options. One being bylaw enforcement could be reduced to result in a $6,000 a year savings, basically cutting the hours that we are requesting our bylaw enforcement. And the fifth option for council to consider is using a portion of your council initiatives reserve to offset the tax levy increase. Last year, it currently sits between 210 and 214,000. And while this wasn't the intent of the reserve, council could draw down 40,000 of this comfortably and still have $174,000 remaining for special circumstances. So in summary, if the top five options that I just discussed are adopted by council, we would see the tax levy increase of 6.7% versus 8.96. But these one-time cuts, as I said, would have council starting at 2.26 in 2024 without any operational increases at all. With your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to hand this over to Andy now for comment on the yellow and red options.
Can we hold the red options until we discuss these? All right. I'd like to deal with your options first, and then we'll turn it over to Andy. Council, you've heard the general statement about the budget, and you heard these first 5 options, which would bring the levy down to 6.7%. Comment, discussion on these 5 options? Do you want to accept those before we go any further? Councilor Oslash first.
I'm against the cutting the bylaw enforcement.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I also do not support cutting the bylaw enforcement. I do support the continuation of the funding for the museum, and because of their ongoing projects, and for the cemetery. What it doesn't show in the cemetery budget presentation that they provided with their application.
I don't think
yes,
these
they
are-
do have a, can I make a comment?
Sure.
They showed a significant reserve balance. What they don't show on that, last week, they let the tender for the construction of an office, storage unit, and washroom to the amount of $203,000 plus HST. They've been planning that project for years, and this year, with the continuation of the support, the funding is that much more critical.
Right. If I can, Deputy Mayor Barbara, those items are not part of the options that are on the table at the moment.
Pardon me?
Those options you're talking about are not on the table at the moment. They're-
Okay, I was going on the yellows, and
I
that
don't
was
think,
the last of the
yeah,
yellows.
they're not part of the reduction to 6.7.
No.
No, they're not.
I'm sorry.
They're going to come up when Andy talks, I think.
Save what I said for later then?
Same. We'll try and remember that. So,
Ditto.
got it. Any other comment on those options, Deputy Councilor Chapman?
Through your mayor. I as well agree that cutting the bylaw enforcement hours is not an option. We don't
Okay.
have enough hours as it is.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, so it looks like we have consensus to do 4 of those options, which would add $6,000 to the 6.7%, but I agree, I don't think we should be cutting any of the bylaw enforcement at all. All right? So they will form part of the amendments that are added to the resolution. So now we can turn it over to Andy with the red ones.
Yes, these are, now I get to be the bad guy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for almost every municipality, 2023 is going to be a budget year with an asterisk next to it. Staff forecasted that this would be an exceptionally difficult year in 2022, and we've been routinely updating council and the public about these challenges starting in September. We provided another update in December about our position, and we've significantly moved that needle from where it was. So we have made a lot of positive progress, but to make as much positive progress as we have and end up at 6.8, I believe now, is a bit frustrating to us. So at the time, when we saw how bad it was going to be, staff started sitting down early on in the process, and we started creating lists of options. You've considered the green options, which were the options that staff could support. Now we're going on to the options that staff can't support. These are the options that are the tough cuts that nobody wants to consider, but we thought that it was important to bring forward yellow, orange, and red cuts for council if they decided to go further. To begin with the yellow options, the first option is not to fund the cemetery in the amount of $18,000 in 2023. This was based upon their reserve position and their indication in their financials that they intend to transfer $30,000 next year from plot sales to the reserves. That was the understanding. Obviously, a bigger aspect of the challenge of this would be a change in our historical relationship with this museum board. That being said, there is no obligation whatsoever for a municipality to fund a museum outside of our boundaries. So it is something that Elmer has historically been involved in, but certainly Malahide has all the onus to provide this service. There's no obligation to the town of Elmer. But there are historic relationships there that could be damaged through that change, but there is $18,000 there. The second option, under the same heading, is not to fund the Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives in 2023. Certainly, staff appreciate all the work in their presentation tonight. In the context of the support, the town's already agreed in principle to provide a minimum of $150,000 from the sale of proceeds of the East Street building to the museum. So, staff are hopeful that this transaction could happen sooner to give them more substantial funding. In addition to that, we've also agreed to match any funding towards that new development put up by Malahide or the county. So if they sold the building for $300,000 and Malahide kicks in $150,000 themselves, then the town would take none of that money back. That money would go directly to the museum. So the town, the way the financing works now is if the town council approves $20,000, the financial support from the town to the museum in total would be, in 2023, would be approximately $31,600. And with the addition to also potentially access at least $150,000 more. By comparison, the other namesake of the museum annually allocates approximately $6,000. So Elmer is putting a lot of money into the museum. That is not to say that the museum is a costly facility, though. It is a very cheap facility from Elmer's perspective to support. It provides a great service. It is just to say that it is a very tough budget year, and we have to look at yellow, red, and orange options, ones that are not recommended by staff. And again, to note for council's point, it does appear that both the cemetery and the museum are making grants for applications for operational funding, and the town's grant policy really is written to exclude operational funding. So both of them, we would like to see future grants focused on capital projects or programs, because that will help council actually evaluate them. Again, these options are not recommended by staff and are being presented as potential one-time reductions to get the levy amount down. That's why we examined all these options. The next option is to reduce bulk garbage collection. This could result in approximate savings of $25,000 in 2023 if this year is canceled. Council received a report on this program recently, and staff do want to acknowledge that it is a valued program by residents. So there would be certainly some complaints as well if we cancel that. The next yellow option is changes to waste collection services. This is an option that we would not anticipate to result in savings in 2023, however, could generate savings in 2024. Council may want to consider this also as an option to advance greater environmental stewardship in our community. At a high level, reviewing waste pickup requires a lot of staff time and effort. It's often a publicly debated issue, and we do have a multi-year agreement that we entered in 2021. So we would be in a position where we wouldn't be going out to market. We'd have to negotiate with our current provider, which may reduce the potential benefits from examining changes to the waste delivery. We could also remove loose leaf collection. This is another popular program provided by the town, but does represent a higher level of service than is often available in communities. If council wishes to examine this, though, we would suggest that a further review be conducted to determine if any cost savings would result, or if this change would just result in shifting staff resources to other tasks. Since it is all our current staff doing it, it might just free them up to do other work, so then there wouldn't be any tangible savings. So we'd want to analyze that more before we do that. The next option is the splash pad. I really like this amenity, as do my daughters. I'm sure anybody who's down there in August sees that it's pretty heavily used. And so, you know, I don't know if you'd find you'd have a hard time finding a splash pad that gets more utilization than Elmer's, but the proposal before you is to close it a month early, and that would save approximately $6,000 to $7,000 in water usage for that. Now we're on to the orange options, so it keeps just getting worse. The first is a steep increase to user fees. As most user fees are regulated, we don't have a lot of discretion to change them without meeting statutory obligations. This really leaves us with the EECC fees, which were approved by the board just last year and would have to go back to the board. A 10% increase would see a reduction of $18,500 in our levy for the EECC. Staff would generally be more supportive of advancing a 4% increase on user fees that can easily be amended for 2023, just to ensure that too much ground isn't lost in the face of inflation, but a lot of our other user fees are pretty minor, so. Increased cost recovery for fire is an option that staff could take direction upon. Certainly we have a great chief, he's here tonight, and I'm very pleased with how he approaches compliance. I know we don't get a chance to talk about investigations or enforcement here publicly, but I do want council to know that Chief McCone really has done some great work to protect the most vulnerable in our community. And I don't know if we start applying fees for some of that work or making it too onerous for people to access that, we might be hindering the way he helps people. So that is why it is an orange risk. Now we're on to more things that staff really would not want to see, these being the red options. There's an orange and a red option for sidewalk snow clearing. The orange option would be to find efficiencies or savings through applying the minimum maintenance standards more diligently. So there could be some savings related to how we schedule work. However, that would be anticipated to cause a lot of complaints. Essentially there you're saying after the snow starts falling, we have 48 hours, or we're going to measure the depth before we put the equipment out on the roads, which could create some efficiencies in scheduling. But right now, our real logic is to get out there and clean up things as quickly and as best as possible, and I think that's what the community expects. The red option here is to pass a bylaw making residents responsible for clearing sidewalks themselves. Staff really think that is a bad idea because a lot of municipalities are going in the other direction due to liability. The next option is closure of the outdoor pool. Staff do see this pool and operating agreement with the YWCA as very desirable. We haven't done an external analysis, but generally we think you'd have a hard time finding another community that could provide an outdoor pool in such a cost-effective manner. Regardless, there would be a potential savings of $35,000 for closing the pool for next year. We also examined reductions in staff complement. Really, in order to realistically reduce staff, we would have to adjust service levels and offerings in many areas, so there aren't any immediate options related to this. You do have closed options that we could discuss further at the end of the meeting if council desires. But overall, just to summarize, none of these options are recommended by staff. They were developed because that's how tough of a budget year it is, and we wanted council to know how hard we've worked on this budget.
Thank you very much, Andy. I think kind of spoke against every one of the items that you mentioned. Is there any appetite for any of those items among council? Anyone want to speak to it other than, I think, Deputy Mayor Barber, we remember your words already, so you could add to them you wish, but let's start with Councillor Chapman.
I know that we're getting into the danger zone, but closing of the splash pad and the pool, I am totally against. And I think that we don't have enough for our youth as it is. So even considering those two closures would be very detrimental to the little activities that we do provide for them.
Anyone else? Councillor Van Raes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I second what Councillor Chapman was saying. Seeing the amount of use that the splash pad and pool receive, I wouldn't support closing them. Also increase the for fire, putting fees on that. I find that would be kind of difficult to explain to Elmer why we're doing that. It's very tough because a lot of these we would have to, I know there's an increase in the budget, or we could decrease the budget by slashing some of this, but and then we're gonna have to explain why you can't take your kids to the splash pad or, yeah, it's very difficult.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Desrosiers.
Thank you, Your Worship. They're more so just a couple questions about two items on there, and just straightforward, I'm not for any of these, they're just questions about those specific options. So one is actually directed towards Councillor Barber regarding the cemetery. Just to confirm, you said, so there's something on the budget or something on their financials that's not there regarding a new dwelling, like a new office, bathroom, storage, is that what you just said?
It's like a shop, an office, and to actually create a washroom.
Okay,
Right now, they have to go into the house.
Okay, so that was my next question, was like, why is it necessary? Is it replacing a current dwelling? Is it like a just totally new? And how have they been managing up until now without it?
May I answer that, Your Worship? The dwelling is actually rented to a private party. It's their home. The cemetery staff and board enter into the back door, and that is the cemetery office.
Okay.
Understanding that it's somebody's home.
Yeah, it's like a common area
And if they want to
space,
use
okay.
the washroom, they have to go inside the home. Very awkward.
Yes, okay. I just wanted clarification on that. And the second thing was leaf collection. And Andy, I think you might be able to answer this. I just wanted greater knowledge of the purpose of the collection. I don't utilize it. I do know some people that do, but let's hypothetically say we got rid of it. Like, what happens? And those leaves just blow away? Or like, we don't really live in a forested area where there's so much heavy leaf collection that we'd be swamped in leaves. So if we didn't collect them, like, is that the risk, like that we would have too much or gutters clogged? Like, what's the issue?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I could probably answer, and maybe Rob can jump in. So it would be, right now, what people can do is just push it onto the road, and we bring in the equipment and scoop it up and take it away. To change, we would have people have to put their leaves in those bags
Okay.
and put it at the roadside.
Okay,
And
so that's specifically.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Barber.
I support the increase of user fees. I believe that staff should come back with a report to outline where improvements could be made. I don't support, or at this particular time, I would like to see the leaf collection continue, but a staff report provided to actually outline what kind of efficiencies could be done in another manner. And snow removal and snow clearing, leave it as it is. People really appreciate that, and it makes getting around town so much easier.
So you've suggested two staff reports there. Councillor Oslach.
Yes, I am in favor of garbage collection and bulk garbage collection in the fall. The residents look forward to that, and they're used to it, and it's increasing every year in bulk collection. And also the curbside garbage removal, recycling is going excellent, and I'm in favor of those two.
When I first looked at all of these, if I may, as chair, make a comment, I thought, gee, these are the kinds of services that the people of the town appreciate. At first, I was hesitant to kind of have Andy go over all of these, but I think it's kind of a lesson in the sense that when people talk about, reducing the costs and reducing the levy, that services could be impacted. And these are the kinds of services that are impacted when you start looking hard at items. I don't support any of them, but it was interesting to hear. And I'm sure we'll hear from the public something like, why would council even consider this kind of stuff? But
Yes, right.
they're hard questions to answer. So Deputy Mayor Barber has suggested that staff do a report on the fees for the complex, correct?
That is in conjunction with the other fees that we charge, the building permit fees and what have you.
Okay.
All of those should be reviewed to make sure that they're appropriate.
And also, you mentioned some other suggestion for a staff report. I've forgotten what it was already.
For the leaf collection?
Comments on those from council? Yeah,
Actually, mine was separate, if that's okay, through you, Mr. Mayor.
that's fine, Councilor Von Rey.
The bulk collection, which, again, I support, I think it's a great service to offer. But is it a possibility to look at, again, to revise or look at maybe shortening the time frame that we do the bulk collection and see if that would reduce the cost while still providing the service, but hopefully reducing a little bit of the cost there?
Staff will look at that when they make a report. Any objection to the suggestions by Deputy Mayor Barber? So we'll add them to the resolution. Councilor Oslad.
I just have one comment. We have $9 million in reserves. We're financially secure. We don't own any money except the streetlights. This will be paid for in the next couple of years. And why don't we take a couple of tax points to reduce the levy out of the reserves?
You're jumping the gun a little bit. I was going to ask Heather to find the reserve accounts and pop them on the screen. If you could
That's
do that.
the one.
Look at reserves next.
I just made one comment.
Have you made the comment?
That's right.
All right, the next item then, I don't see any appetite for any of the stuff that Andy was talking about, so. Want to look at reserves, before we look at any of the department by department costs. Are you able to pop the reserves up on the screen?
Speak to that.
Can you speak?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll just give the treasurer 1 second to send the information to the deputy clerk. He's operating the screen.
Okay, fine.
Can we have a short break?
Everybody, would you like a break? Or council would like a short recess? All right, let's have a short recess then, for 5 minutes, come back. So good, I can.
Got 0 of them through.
Push a button.
A long evening, so we may need another recess. Anyway, while we're looking at the reserves, I just want to say to Owen that going through the budget, I would like you to go through attachment 2, which just has the, I guess, each department's list without all kinds of stuff in between. So it's attachment 2. Anyway, you see the reserve items up there. Arthur, you wanted to deal with reserves, so I'll start with you. If do you have a question, comment, anything?
Well, I like to see the reserves depleted by, well, we have $9 million in there, but at least 2 tax points somewhere in the reserves.
Council, discussion, comment? Councillor Chapman.
Through you, Mayor. Reserves have a purpose, and just going and taking them out for the sake of reducing the levy is not always a good idea. And in the past, previous council did that. And then when I was in my first term, we had to play major catch-up to make up for that. We do have a reserve that's a discretionary reserve.
I know.
And to use that reserve is different because it doesn't have a specific purpose.
Yeah.
But to go dipping into the other reserves, I'm not for that. So.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Barber.
And I'm inclined to support Councillor Chapman's concept of the discretionary reserve be looked at and adjusted on a one-year basis.
When you're talking about the discretionary reserve, is that the proper title of it, or are you thinking of the council?
Initiatives. That's the one there.
The council initiatives, right?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? So if you want to look at that to reduce the budget, what kind of amounts are we talking here?
Can I, Heather,
Sure.
you have a recommendation for that?
So currently in the green options, you would like to reduce it by 40,000, which would leave it at 174,000. If you would like to reduce it by another 2 tax points, that would make it up to 160,000, approximately with the 40,000, which would get you down to 4.85%. However, that doesn't leave you with very much in order to fund any fun projects for council to, sponsor. So,
And I just add.
it's with whatever you want to do, but.
I just add to Heather's that this is, the fund is topped up by dividends from Earth, and they've already given us an indication that there may not be a dividend this year because they had to make some other payments. So that would put you in a position where you would be waiting. When do we get the dividends? And usually in June, right? So you wouldn't see that get topped up at all until June of 2024 potentially.
So are you saying that the 6% has already taken the 40,000 out?
The 6.8%, with removing the bylaw of 6,000, is 40,000 contribution from council initiatives reserves already, plus a reduction of 93,000 from other reserves, which would be a total reduction of 133,000. You could add another 120,000 to that reduction of council initiatives reserves, and that would get you to 4.85%.
And if we only did 1 point?
So you would do approximately 100,000, and that would get you to 5.82% of a tax levy increase. That doesn't equate to the tax rate increase, but it's very close.
Can I
Go ahead.
continue? I have concerns about depleting it too much because the whole purpose of the council initiative reserve is to help to fund things that, as Heather mentioned, fun things. Those fun things are things like if we chose to have a festival, we could help support it. It's to give support to other things. Sometimes we try to reduce something so much that you lose so much on the other end. I would be okay with taking, you said 100,000 from there?
Yep.
Or that, as opposed to 100 and whatever. So that would bring us down to 5.8%. It's still high, but it's not out of reach, I
Okay.
guess I would say.
And we haven't looked at any of the departments yet, but that would be, how much are we taking additionally out of the initiatives?
Total, it would be a $100,000 reduction from council initiatives. 40,000 was in the green options. It would be an additional $60,000.
Okay, feeling of council on this? Do we have a consensus on doing that?
That seems to make sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we will note that, right? So you're taking an additional 60,000 out of the council initiatives.
Would bring it down to 5.8%.
All right, good.
Your worship, can I ask a taxation question that I'm curious on?
We're dealing with taxes, yes. Right.
Okay. Most of the municipalities around us are really benefiting from assessment growth. And their tax rate increase projected out of the box is maybe where we might end up. Growth has been flat, and we're hoping that over the next couple of years that we'll be in a better position. Can you explain how that works for everybody's benefit?
So for 2021, we had a negative assessment of 0.04%, which is almost unheard of. For this year, we had marginal growth of 0.99%. As soon as all these developments get online, approximately each home could bring in an additional $8,000 worth of tax revenue. So as these homes come online, it will pay for some of the additional services, some of the additional costs that we're seeing, and that's how the neighboring municipalities are able to have such a low levy increase, is because they're taking that growth and applying it to, taking it for themselves so that they can reduce the tax rate. So for us, we don't have that option right now because we don't have all those homes coming online yet. We should by the end of the year. We have hired the right people in order to get these developments off the ground, but we just haven't seen them materialize yet.
Okay, Councillor Alsalatch.
Yeah, Your Worship. To Heather, 5.8%, what would that average on a homeowner per month?
Wow.
I believe if it assists, I know the 6.7 was around $9.14 per month, so it would be under $9.14 per month, but Heather's doing the math right now.
And while she's doing that, if we could have the attachment 2 on the screen, and we start looking at it department by department.
So
a quick look.
approximately 5.07% tax increase. Do you want me to flip back?
Okay. Can you make that any larger? All right. I can't really see there. Okay, we're starting with that general government rather than the summary. That's fine. So if there's staff that would like to speak to any of these, as they're on the board, so go ahead. And if there's questions or comments by council as we go through these, we'll welcome those as we go through each of those. So general government, starting, comments on there, questions? Do you have it on the screen? Because mine's bad, I can't see what I was looking at. Contracted services, okay, not there. All right, so that's the general government one, right? I think I should have brought my laptop. Right. Thank you. All right. No, Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, I just, through you, your mayor, I just have a question. The contracted services, I assume that that is the contract for the, you know who I'm referring to, her position, this data entry, is that what we're looking at?
Contracted services refers to, if I may, Mr. Mayor, IT, which is related to all of the licensing requirements that are now required by our cyber insurance. So we have additional IT licensing that we need to adhere to make sure that we qualify for the cyber insurance policy.
And it's that much, wow.
The contracted services for our external IT, we have Laserfish annual maintenance contract costs, and just additional computer and hardware software, all falls in there.
Okay.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Bob?
The winter patrol that Malahide does, do they still do it? And is that a contracted service as well? Or how's it paid?
That wouldn't be in the general government department.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this area? Let's move to the next one.
It's planning and development.
Plan and development. Anything there, council? Councillor Chapman?
Through your mayor, transfer to own funds. Own funds, oh, own is the,
Our own.
yes, I got it.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know what it is.
Okay.
I guess maybe I should ask them, let them know what it is.
Oh,
All right, next one. Environ Services. Questions you have there? Comments? Next one. Transportation. Next one. Yeah, Waterworks. Next one. All right. Next one. I think just giving you a chance to comment on specific ones. Once we're done with this, if you have some general comments, you're welcome to make those. But I thought it would be useful to look at each of the departments. Next. The complex budget is, of course, not passed yet, as Heather mentioned when she went through that, but this is your best projection in terms of what it should be. All right. Next one. Protection services. Okay. Next. So we've all looked at these figures for many weeks now, so had a chance to discern where we would like to question some items, and so we're just moving through these. Next.
Your worship, one question to the chief. Total rents and financial services, what's that one about, chief?
yeah, the equipment leases and rental.
Through your worship, our rental is our, due to COVID, we needed to rent bunker gear and such. We had to rent bunker gear because there's none available.
Oh, okay.
We also rent our copiers and office equipment.
Thank you.
Okay. Next. Police Services. All right. Next. There we have other, yeah, other. Anything there? Nothing? Okay. Next. I think we're pretty much through everything. Committees, discussed those already. Next. Council. Next. I think we're done. All right, so I'll give you the opportunity to kind of question. At the moment, we're sitting at 5.07, is that what you said, Heather?
The levy increase would be 5.82%. That would equate to approximately 5.07%. I just said quick math, though, so don't hold me right to the point.
Okay. Anything else on the budget, then? Sitting at just under 6%. So we've taken basically 4% out of the budget this time. All right?
Through you,
Councilor
Mr.
Raleigh.
Mayor. What was, or what, I think Arthur asked earlier, what does 5.8% look like per month to the average home?
Just got to open one more spreadsheet.
Sorry.
Okay.
Andy said it would be under $9 roughly per month?
Yeah.
So to not make any drastic cuts to it and only increase by $9-ish per month, I think that's pretty reasonable.
It would be approximately $7.80 a month.
Thank you.
So less than
And that's-
$100 a year.
That's based on a $214,000 assessment, correct?
Correct. That's for the average homeowner.
Yep.
So basically, if people wanted to calculate it themselves, if you did it per 100,000, it would be easier to calculate. So per 100,000, it would be roughly 2/5 of $7. So people, if they're in 400,000, they could just multiply by 4. You know what I'm getting at is if we have a figure per 100,000, it's easier for people to figure out what the increase is. Okay. All right, I don't see any other comment on the budget. I think we will vote on the motion. Then you want to read the motion as it is?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll summarize the adjustments that have been put forth by members of council where we've
Make it easy for you, right?
yeah, and where we've sort of witnessed that there are consensus at the council table. Please bear with me, I'll work through this. So this was moved by Councillor Oslich and seconded by Councillor Rahe. And it's that report Finance 123 respecting the preliminary operating budget be received as information. And that council direct staff to present the final 2023 operating budget with council directed amendments for review and adoption. And I'll summarize those amendments. So firstly, we have a reduction in the contribution to $8,000 for the next election for 2023, so that's in the 2023 year, and it'll be added to the operating budget for 2024. We'll reduce the $10,000 and $25,000 from transfers to reserves for modernization projects for 2023. We'll reduce a total $50,000 transfer to capital funds for asset management for 2023. And council opted to not proceed with reducing hours for bylaw enforcement service, but finally, council has opted to consider to use a portion of the council initiative reserves to offset the tax levy increase. And I have a note here that we'll be taking an additional $60,000 from the council initiatives fund. Furthermore, there was a recommendation endorsed by Councillor Barber with the consensus of council to support a staff report, the authoring of a staff report to explore what an increase of user fees across the board would look like. So he requested some further analysis to that effect. Additionally, Councillor Barber requested another report analyzing the impact of altering the leaf collection program. And then Councillor Van Raes, with the consensus of council, also requested that staff produce a report to analyze whether or not there are any prospective savings in the bulk waste collection programming that's currently offered. And with that, I believe that's the extent of the options.
Very good. Can you repeat that?
Right.
I think everybody got the resolution. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And it is carried. You can note it is unanimous. And we have a report by CAO concerning the red and orange options, which we need to bring up. So if you read that resolution.
That report, CAO 523, entitled 2023 Operational Budget Options, be received for information.
Very mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Barber and Councillor Rosier. All those in favor? As carried. Very good. Now we move on to the item 6, which is adoption of council and committee minutes. Minutes to approve. Josh.
Council approves the following minutes. Regular council held on January the 11th, 2023.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Ojai, seconded by Councillor Rahi. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. Minutes to receive.
That council receives the following minutes. Meeting of Elgin County Council held on December the 6th, 2022, and meeting of Elgin County Council held on December the 7th, 2022, and further, meeting of the Town of Elmer Police Services Board held on December the 13th, 2022.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Van Raes. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. Number of communication items in 7. We have a short resolution for that one too, right? Go ahead.
That items 7.1 to 7.9 of the of the February 1st, 2023 consent agenda be received for information. And further, that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw authorizing the treasurer to utilize the consolidated reserve fund for borrowing, if necessary, to meet operating expenditures in 2023. And that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw authorizing the treasurer to draw on the existing standby line of credit with the Bank of Montreal, if required, to meet operating expenditures in 2023. And that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw establishing the interim tax rates for the first two 2023 installment dates. And that the council of the Town of Elmer receives report Plan 0323 regarding planning evaluation report, application for consent E3822, respecting property known municipally as 448 Talbot Street East, and further, that application for consent number E3822 relating to the property legally described as part of Lot 86, concession south of Talbot Road, and known municipally as 448 Talbot Street East, be supported in principle with the recommended conditions for reasons set out in that report, and that the report be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and final consideration. And finally, that the Council of the Town of Elmer receives report Plan 423 regarding planning evaluation report, application for consent to sever, number E3922, respecting 448 Talbot Street East, and that the consent to sever, application number E3922, relating to the property legally described as part of Lot 86, concession south of Talbot Road and known municipally as 448 Talbot Street East, be supported in principle with the recommended conditions for reasons set out in that report, and that report be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and final consideration.
Mover and a seconder. Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Rahi. Questions, comments on those items? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Action items. Resolution.
That report, Operations 423, entitled DWQMS Operational Plan Annual Review 2021, be received for information.
We have mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Van Raes, seconded by Councillor Desrosiers. All right, we have the Manager of Operations report.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to be bringing forward the DWQMS Operational Plan Annual Management Review. The Town of Elmer is required to conduct an annual management review to satisfy element 20 of Ontario's Drinking Water Quality Management System. The purpose of the review is to ensure that the town annually assesses its drinking water system. So just a summary of the findings in the attached review. No incidents of non-compliance were identified in the ministry inspection for the period of April 1st, 2021 to April 30th, 2022. No incidents of non-compliance for previous inspections that covered the remainder of 2021. No incidents of non-conformities were found in the internal or the external audits. No incidents of adverse drinking water tests were found in the year 2021. And all other management requirements were determined to be completed. Continual improvement of the town's water infrastructure is possible by adhering to Ontario's Drinking Water Quality Management System. And I can answer any questions if council may have any.
Question, did you want to comment?
Just if I could, Your Worship, this is a review of the management system. You'll notice there's not, chlorine residuals as a part of this report. Part of Connor's role as his quality assurance management is to report to the council, the owners, on how well we did through the management of the system this year. And that's what this report functions, because you'll notice the Act requires that Connor sit down right up to the CAO to make sure we go through the performance on the management of the system. And you can see that even from the report, there's a section that we have to review to say, is council funding it at the right level? Are we running our operators through on the right stuff? And so that's what the purpose of this report is, to review more the management side of things, to make sure that you're aware of what's going on and you're happy with how it's being managed, to make sure we provide that safe water.
Thank you for those comments. Questions or comments?
I just wanted to make a comment, Your Worship. It's difficult to achieve the results that staff did over the last couple of years, and you're to be complimented for that success.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further questions or comments? I'll call the question on the resolution. All those in favor? As carried. Thank you. Manager of Operations, Water Distribution System resolution.
That report, Operations 523, entitled Elmer Water Distribution System Annual and Summary Reports, be received for information. And that council receives and approves annual summary report for the Elmer Distribution System for the year 2022, as required by Ontario Regulation 170.03, Schedule 22. And further, that the council receives Elmer Distribution System Annual Report for the year 2022 as required by Ontario Regulation 170.03, Section 11.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Desrosiers, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Manager of Operations, or Connor.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. As was written there in the recommendation, the annual summary report and the annual distribution report are both required under regulation to be done annually and presented to council. Based on the contents of each respective report, it can be seen that the Elmer Drinking Water System continues to provide safe, clean drinking water for residents.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Is carried. So we go to Director of Emergency Services, dealing with Elmer Fire Department final report resolution.
That report, Fire 423, entitled Elmer Fire Department Final 2022 Report, be received for information.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Roselage, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Chief McCone.
Thank you, Your Worship, member councilors. So basically, what we provided is a summary of the year's activity. Although the fire chief comes before council to update on specific items throughout the year, we like to provide a snapshot of all the activities that are done at Elmer Fire. One item I'd like to point out to our committee is our costs, to the council, is our cost-saving ventures. Excuse me. It's difficult for a service provider of fire protection to produce sizable income. So we look for cost-saving opportunities in our day-to-day operation. And by doing so, we observed savings in 2022 of over $130,000, which you have to remember includes the early procurement of the town's new pumper truck. We review insurance coverages, electrical consumption, phone bills, IT, internet expenses, and that's just a few of the lists. We also apply for grant opportunities when they're available and to continue to purchase used and demonstration type equipment when it is appropriate to do so. Thank you, Council. Any questions you have on my report, I'd be happy to answer at this time.
Thank you very much for that report. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report? And that is carried. Thank you. Next is this Associate Director of Infrastructure and Operations resolution.
That report operations 423, entitled Tender Award Wastewater Pump Station Roof Replacements, be received for information, and that the tender submitted by Smith Pete Roofing and Sheet Metal Limited in the amount of $90,105 excluding HST be accepted, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with Smith Pete Roofing and Sheet Metal Limited following the terms and conditions in the tender.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Van Ray, seconded by Deputy Mayor Barber. Associate Director Terry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'll keep it brief. The report before council is for a tender award for 2 complete roof replacements, one being the main pump station at Optimus Park and the blower building at the lagoon. The 2 roofs were combined into one project to obtain the best possible pricing. The scope of the project is for the removal of the existing roofing materials and replacement with a new 3-ply roof system, which includes new insulation, new flashing, roof drains, and epoxy paint on all surfaces, including the underside of the soffits. The tender received a lot of interest and competitive prices, and I would be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you for that report. Questions or comments? Councillor Roy.
I hate flat roofs because that seems ridiculous for the cost of what they are. Is there an option to put trusses on and barn steel? Like, is that a thing that is possible to do? Because that's ridiculous, in my opinion, for the square feet of those roofs. And they're not, like, they come with a 20-year warranty from what I saw, but, you know, trusses, barn steel, or steel on the roof is gonna last a lot longer than 20 years, in my opinion. And that, I think you could do it for a portion of the cost if the buildings were able to do it, and it would last longer.
Good question, and through your worship, it was something that was discussed. We didn't look into the structural integrity because these are concrete roofs. So without digging deeper into that, we had recommendations that this was the most suitable solution for this. Like it says in the report, it does come with a 20-year warranty, which is hard spec'd in the contract, that the manufacturer needs to provide the paperwork and inspections throughout the contract to provide that warranty. I should add that there is an option to up the warranty if we do choose so. So depending on when they get into these roofs, that's something that the contingency could be utilized. It's about $3,800 for an additional 5-year warranty. But the contingency is there because you never know what you're going to get into until you open it up.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Did we have a mover and a seconder?
I thought we did. Did I miss that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, through your worship, so Councillor Van Ray's moved.
I'm sorry. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. And Chief Administrative Officer report on insurance, you have a resolution?
That report CAO 623 respecting insurance update and renewal be received for information, and that council approve the renewal of insurance from May 2023 to May 2024 with Marsh Canada Limited, and further that council endorse increasing the town's insurance deductible as outlined in the confidential attachment to mitigate costs increase for 2023.
Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Barber, Councillor Van Raes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the proposal for council on insurance is to grant staff the ability to renew our existing insurance with the changes to our deductibles as it was outlined in the confidential attachment. This approach is not without some level of risk. However, the amount of the deductible increase is not uncommon in Ontario, so that range is pretty common. The town has been successful in avoiding a lot of the insurance increases that have negatively impacted other municipalities. It's, however, hard to quantify the benefits of cost avoidance when everybody's seen such steep increases. So we haven't seen it hit our budget, but other people have in the last 2 years. Generally, though, staff, I would say, are doing a good job of identifying and mitigating risks, as well as actively managing the intake and processing of claims, which keeps our amounts low. That being said, just last week, we did have a significant claim that we've put in, and we're still waiting on the, and we've certainly notified council of it. We had the trackless accident, the sidewalk plow. So we are waiting to get full details on how much that will cost, and we do imagine it would be over the former deductible. But we still think it would be a good idea to increase the deductible, and it's also a good idea to continue with Marsh for another year. But that'll answer any questions you have.
Council? Deputy Mayor Barber.
How many active, thank you, Your Worship, how many active companies actually insure municipalities? Very limited number, I understand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's either 2 or 3.
They got you.
Yeah, so no competition. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried, thank you. And report from the Director of Corporate Services, we have a resolution.
That report, Clerk 923, entitled Procedural Bylaw Update, Process Overview, be received for information.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Desrosiers, seconded by Councillor Rahi.
Sure. Through your worship, the purpose of this report is to provide some background information to council on the legislative requirements surrounding municipal procedural bylaws, and to outline a review process for consideration of the town's procedure bylaw 718 as amended. Throughout this term of council, we do have some significant bylaws that we engage with on a regular basis that staff intend to review. This is really sort of something that it's best practice to do this periodically, and we really wanted to take the opportunity to outline the process that we're hoping to work through these reviews with council on. So in practice, municipal procedure bylaws play an integral role in guiding the way that residents and other stakeholders interact with council, and as such, it's important that the bylaw is reviewed and updated from time to time. And this ensures that we continue to effectively satisfy the needs of the community while also remaining up to date with the legislative requirements. So staff are seeking feedback from members of council and the community regarding proposed changes in areas within the procedure bylaw that should be focused on within the upcoming review. These changes could range from discussions surrounding council meeting times and council meeting frequencies to processes for receiving delegations from the public. And staff also intend to undertake a review of the bylaw to ensure that it's legislatively sound and up to date. One of the items that council will be well aware of is the prevalence of hybrid meetings across municipalities in Ontario. We've obviously benefited from the ability to undertake virtual meetings through the authority of the Emergency Measures Act. However, that's another area that council can certainly consider, and staff will be researching actively as we bring this update forward. In terms of timing, staff are recommending March 1st as the deadline for submitting feedback upon proposed changes for future amendment. And then at that point, staff will provide an informational report on March 15th outlining recommendations that were received. So at that time, council will have the opportunity to debate some of the prospective changes that have been brought forward throughout the review period. And finally, staff are required to provide notice to the community of our intent to amend this bylaw. So we'll take care of that. And ultimately, the bylaw will be available for final consideration at the April 5th regular meeting of council. And I would encourage any member of council that wishes to discuss to book an appointment with Andy Owen or myself, and we'd be happy to review the procedural bylaw at your convenience.
Very good, thank you for that report. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Quick comment, Your Worship. I certainly support the continuation of the virtual meetings for council members. If they happen to be away for any particular reason, to be able to participate as much as possible.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. 8.7, report from CAO on the BMA municipal study resolution.
That report, CAO 723, entitled 2022 BMA Municipal Study, be received for information.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Van Raes, moved and seconded by Councillor Desrosiers. Andy, yes.
I'll be very brief. This is good news. Certainly the report that was participated in by 117 municipalities last year. It shows that Aylmer has a really great comprehensive offering of incentives and policies to support economic growth. For southwestern Ontario, we've got the 4th lowest water and wastewater costs, so we've got a real competitive advantage there. We are in enviable position overall financially per capita. Again, we're in the 4th best position in all of southwestern Ontario of the participating members. Our asset life cycle stage is overall very positive. We're estimated to be 3rd. To have the most remaining life cycle. So that doesn't mean we don't have to worry about asset management, but it does mean that we have assets that aren't going to fail immediately, and we have low debt levels. And obviously, we've already kind of identified previously our pressures that we have here, low local income levels and low local CVA levels. Our strategy to address those through growth seems to be the appropriate strategy, and I think things are going in the right direction for Aylmer, and we're going to see great results. And we'll participate in this again next year, and hopefully the information will look even better then. With that, I'll try to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, we'll look better, thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried, thank you. So, new business and matters of urgency, nothing. Reading of bylaws and proceedings thereon. 10.3 is the one we're looking at, right? Giving 3 readings to a number of bylaws. So, want a drink of water before you go through these?
Thank you, Your Worship. That council gives 3 readings to and approves the bylaw 422, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 5799, being the zoning bylaw of the town of Aylmer, and that is respecting file number ZBA 0422 for property known municipally as 62 Pine Street West. Bylaw 523, being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for all tax classes for 2023, to provide for payment of taxes and to provide for penalty and interest of 1.25%. Bylaw 623, being a bylaw authorizing the treasurer to draw on the existing standby line of credit if required. Bylaw 722, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Aylmer and Poplar Ridge Riders Snowmobile Club for the establishment of a snowmobile trail in the Town of Aylmer. Bylaw 823, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at the regular council meeting held on January 11th, 2023. And finally, bylaw 923, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing for current expenditures and capital outlay during 2023 from the Consolidated Reserve Fund of the Town of Aylmer.
Okay, mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Desrosiers, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Questions on any of these? They've all been before council. All right. Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Is carried. And 10.3. Thought we did that already.
We're good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So bylaw, your inquiry?
Inquiries by members.
Yeah, okay. Inquiries by members, then. No inquiries, statements and committee reports? And report of the mayor, none. Notice of motion? None. Looking at closed session, unless there is an objection, I would think that the items in the closed session are not relevant to what we're doing or are important. Is there any objection to just missing the closed session? Take a look at the items. The items deal with operational budget options, which we've passed the budget already, and secondly, dealing with insurance. And the easement purchase is the third one. So if you would like to deal with any one of those, then we will go into closed session. If not, I would declare that we don't have a closed session. Any objections? Did you have a point that you want to
I
consider?
think we may need to discuss the easement one. I think before, we merged the two meetings together, so we had the conversation about skipping it before we merged the
That's
two
right,
agendas.
that's right. The third one is. So we will go into closed session, so we need a motion.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 9:31 PM to discuss the following matter, and that is Chief Administrative Officer Report CAO 823 respecting an easement purchase. And that item is closed pursuant to the public, subject to, my apologies, that item is closed to the public pursuant to Section 239(2)C and K of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board.
All right. Mover and seconder, moved by Deputy Mayor Barber, seconded by Councillor Van Rahi, sorry. All in favor? Yes, carried. We'll take a very brief recess and move into closed session.
If I may, your worship, we should approve the minutes from last meeting. I apologize, I didn't point that out before.
Okay, so we can do that. Forgetting we have to do that anymore. All right.
Just clarifying with Owen, the deputy clerk as well, he appears to be,
The stream's back on.
okay. So we'll rise in the
So go ahead with the motion.
That council rise from the meeting closed to the public at 9:40 PM, and reports the following: that report CAO 823 respecting closed session easement purchase be received as information, and that council approve acceptance of the negotiated proposal for a sanitary easement to service AIM Park.
Okay. Mover and seconder. Councilor Desrosiers and Councilor Rahi. Questions, comments? All those in favor? That's carried. And what does that leave? I guess that leaves a motion to adjourn. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Barbara and Councilor Van Rays. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried, and we're done. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a long night.